It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome into the real Jonathan Smith Show right here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe watch it on Twitter, __ Jonathan Smith, if you want to follow me there. Maybe you're listening via the Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. And if you want even more from me, you can check out the My Take Is YouTube page. Tyrese Halliburton. Tonight, Game 3, Cavaliers, Pacers. And I was thinking last night about what do I think is going to happen in Game 3 between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Indiana Pacers as that series now makes its way here to Indianapolis. Hopefully you're going to the game tonight. I know I'll be there. Big thank you to Kevin Pritchard for hooking me up with some tickets, being able to take my dad, which is really, really cool. So very, very excited about that. And as I was thinking last night about what's definitely going to happen in Game 3, the one thing that I feel very confident in saying is Tyrese Halliburton is going to play well. And that's a big step in the right direction. You say, well, Jonathan, what do you mean? He's the best player on this team. We always expect him to play well. And for me, he's finally kind of crossed over into this category of I expect him to play well every night in the playoffs. Whereas previously, it's like, look, he's going to play well during the regular season. And then we watched him in the playoffs last year. And he wasn't good every time he stepped out onto the court. There were moments in games where it's like, is Tyrese Halliburton really going to show up here? Because he had bad games last year in the playoffs. Game 1 and Game 5 against the Bucks. Games 1 and 5 against the Knicks. None of them were good. Talking about like single-digit scoring nights where he'd take less than 10 shots. The aggressiveness wasn't really there. That was a legitimate concern for him last year. This year, however, that is no longer a concern. He's been good in every single playoff game the Pacers have played in so far, and it's why they're 6-1 in the playoffs. He has done an incredible job of finding that balance between being aggressive and getting his teammates involved. He's broken the paint so many times in these first 6 playoff games. And if that continues tonight, then the Pacers are going to have an excellent chance to win despite being 3.5-point underdogs. By the way, that 3.5-point underdog line tells me that Cleveland's got dudes playing. Maybe it's Evan Mobley. Maybe it's Evan Mobley and Darius Garland. Maybe it's all 3 of the guys that missed Game 2. I don't know. Maybe that'll get Kenny Atkinson to stop complaining. I got that audio coming up for you here at some point during the show. Back to Tyrese Halliburton anyway. He's done an excellent job of being aggressive and also getting his teammates involved. And that has been the recipe for success for him the last 2 years. Touch the paint, and the Pacers become a better basketball team. Because the Pacers have a ton of spacing, right? Like they have 5 guys on the floor at all times who can knock down a 3. But spacing starts at the rim. Like you can have as much shooting in the world. It doesn't matter if you don't find a way to break the defense down and have a threat of scoring at the rim, right? Because obviously, like you want the defense moving in so you can then kick out. Halliburton is the Pacers' best player, Tim and Siakam, but he's their best player at providing rim pressure because he's an excellent finisher. I thought he was great in Game 1, not only finishing at the rim, but also using his mid-range game, which is so good. You know, he hasn't shot the ball well from 3 yet in the playoffs. He's only shooting 31% from 3 so far in these playoffs, and you haven't noticed it because he's done a great job at scoring in other ways. And that is the thing for him. Like the best version of Tyrese Halliburton is the one getting to the rim, not the one settling for a bunch of jump shots, 28 feet away from the basket, because he can get into a lull like that sometimes. But he's done a great job in these playoffs of not falling into that lull. That's part of why I expect him to play well now every playoff game that the Pacers play in. Tyrese Halliburton becomes a normal NBA point guard when he settles for threes. But when he's getting downhill, finding a way to get to the rim, using that mid-range pull-up game. By the way, when you do all that, it makes your step-back three a little easier to get to. He becomes this elite player that we've seen all season long when he uses his full arsenal of his scoring ability. And he clearly understands that, and I expect him to continue to be great in these playoffs because of that. And I think that it continues tonight. I think he continues to find ways to get to the rim because while the Indiana Pacers have had no answer for Donovan Mitchell, the Cleveland Cavaliers have had no answer for Tyrese Halliburton so far in these first two games. The question for tonight is who else is going to get going? And usually when that question is asked, it's in a derogatory term. You know, it's someone on ESPN talking about the Lakers being like, who's going to help LeBron James? Who's going to step up? That is like a go-to first take thing. They'll say, so-and-so needs to step up. And it's usually followed by, and it's usually following the question of like, who's going to be better tonight? And when it comes to the Pacers, like it's not a derogatory question. Because when you look at this Pacers team, like it is Russian roulette of which non-Tyrese Halliburton dude is going to be awesome tonight. And the Pacers have had players show up and play great alongside Tyrese Halliburton all playoffs long. It's why they're 6-1 so far in these playoffs. And it seems to be someone different every night. Sometimes it's Miles Turner. Miles Turner's been excellent so far through these playoffs. Aaron Nesmith and Benedict Mathurin were the two big guys who stepped up there in game 2 the other night. Andrew Nembhard has had some great moments. TJ McConnell, game 5, the end of the third quarter and the start of the fourth quarter. He was fantastic. Like you have to have that for this Pacers team because it's not just Tyrese Halliburton. It is all 5 guys on the floor. Who's that guy going to be tonight? I hope it's Pascal Siakam. He's due for a big game. I highlighted some of his struggles yesterday. Like the last 4 games, you know, going back to that series against the Bucks, he just hasn't been as impactful on the offensive end of the floor. And he's now due for a really big game. I expect him to be totally locked in. He is the most experienced Pacer. Like this is the only guy I believe on the roster who has won an NBA title. There may be a second guy in there that I'm forgetting, but anyway, he is the most experienced Pacer. He knows what it takes to win games like tonight, where the Cleveland Cavaliers are going to come in full tilt boogie, just going at it. And I think he's going to have a big game tonight. He's due to kind of break out. And when he does, we're going to see this Pacers offense go to a whole nother level. Like they've scored 120 points in back-to-back games against the Cavaliers without Pascal Siakam being great. So I'm expecting a big game for him tonight. I'm expecting for your Indiana Pacers to come out incredibly focused tonight because they didn't come out focused in game 2. And it's why they got off to that slow start. Tyrese Halliburton was asked about game 3 tonight. And at the end of this statement, he addresses the lack of focus and the lack of energy to start game 2 and how that won't be an issue in game 3.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously that's, to go there and win 2 is a really big deal, especially, just because of who they are, what their home court looks like, what playoffs look like. To go take 2 at home, on their home floor is a big deal. But still think we just got to approach it the right way, man. Like, you want to take advantage of the opportunity that's in front of us, but at the same time, you understand that, they're going to play desperate. They're going to play to win. And honestly, we should be desperate too. We should be just as desperate to protect home court, take care of home court the right way. Because, mathematically, if we take care of home court, we win the series. So, it's really important for us to just approach it the right way. I felt like game 2, we were a little loose to start the game. And we got to nip that in the bud, be ready to go game 3.
Got to nip it in the bud, not the butt, as I used to say. I think it's a pretty common mistake that people make. But Tyrese Halliburton right there talking about that slow starting game 2 and how it was due to a lack of focus and how they need to nip that in the bud. And look, he's obviously right. And this is a very serious Pacers team. They've closed out, big time series before. Think game 7 in the Garden last year. They're going to be ready to go tonight. And I think they'll look much better in the first quarter than they did in game 2, which, like, that's an incredibly low bar. It's like, will the Pacers score more than 16 points in the first quarter? The answer is probably yes. I don't expect for the Pacers to get down by 20 at any point during this game, but it's going to be the toughest of the games that they've played in so far. And not just because they're up 2-0. That's not the only reason why. Like, obviously, the Cavaliers are going to come at them with everything they have, because they don't want to go down 3-0 because no one's ever came back from down 3-0. But Coach Carlisle was asked about what this team needs to do better to avoid getting down 20 again. And he says something very important at the end of this clip.
Rebounding, big thing. We got to do better against their pressure. And obviously Mitchell's a big concern. And it sounds like all their guys are going to play in game 3. That's what we're hearing. So we got to be prepared for that. So, in a playoff series, there's always a lot going on. There's a lot we got to be ready for.
Rick Carlisle, Pacers head coach, right there, talking about how they need to rebound better and they need to defend Donovan Mitchell better and they need to handle the pressure a little bit better. And that's all good. That's all important. And I'm going to talk about that because Coach Carlisle is obviously correct. But he also mentions that they're expecting for everyone for Cleveland to play. And I said, before game 2, Kenny Atkinson had made a comment about how he doesn't want to play Darius Garland if he's only at 50 or 60%. And I said, that changes when you go down 2-0. And it seems like it's about to. And if the Cavaliers do have everyone, they could be lying. That's very possible. If the Cavaliers do have everyone, then this game is going to look incredibly unique compared to the first 2. Even if DeAndre Hunter, Darius Garland, and Evan Mobley aren't all at 100%, and I don't expect them to because no one's at 100% at this point in the year. But all 3 of those players obviously make the Cleveland Cavaliers better. Obviously, how healthy they are will have an impact on how things go for them. But if they're all at 70 or 80%, then I will be legitimately worried. They went 64-18 for a reason last year. All 3 of those players played a huge role in that. But I do think Coach Carlisle is right. And if they fix the 3 things that he mentioned, then the Pacers will win this game, even if Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, and DeAndre Hunter, all 3 play. The game will be different, but if they rebound better, the Pacers miraculously won the rebounding battle in game 2, 44-43, and it's because of all the rebounds that they had in the fourth quarter. The first 3 quarters, they got crushed on the glass. Wasn't close. Wasn't even a competition. So they have to fix that. Okay. They also have to stop turning the basketball over. They have had an uncharacteristically bad series in terms of their turnovers. They turned the ball over 17 times in game 1. They turned the ball over 18 times in game 2. That can't continue to happen either. Okay, that is an uncharacteristic thing for the Pacers to do. They were the 3rd best team in the NBA during the regular season at not turning the ball over. And this is something that I expect for them to fix. And the really funny thing is, Tyrese Haliburton, I don't think he's turned the ball over once in this series. It's everybody else. Andrew Nembhard turned the ball over 8 times in game 2. I don't expect him to do that again. Okay, so I do expect for that to be fixed tonight. The big thing, though, and I don't think that they have an answer for it, they can't slow down Donovan Mitchell. I don't know what they're going to do. Like, legitimately. He's just going by Andrew Nembhard and Aaron Nesmith at will. He's, getting to his 3-point pull-up and his 3-point step-backs pretty consistently. He's just not making them. And he's due for a big shooting night after starting 2 of 18 from 3 in these first 2 games. I know that he just scored 48 points in game 2, but he can play better if he just makes a few jump shots. And that is the other very concerning thing because, the people in Cleveland have deemed it the Cavalanche, where they just kind of start hitting a whole bunch of threes. I compare them to Florida's college basketball team, because the question with Florida wasn't if they were going to make a bunch of threes. It's when are they going to make a bunch of threes. Cleveland is the NBA version of that. It's not, are they going to make a bunch of threes? No, it's when, because it's coming. It's going to happen. the fact that the Cavaliers have shot under 30% from three in these first two games is concerning because water finds its level. They were second in the NBA this year in three-point shooting percentage during the regular season at 38%. The threes are going to start falling at some point. Hopefully, that's not tonight. And I don't think that this is just a shooting variance thing. When you look at the playoff percentages, the Indiana Pacers lead the playoffs in three-point shooting percentage at 43%. It's not shooting variance. The Pacers they generated a ton of open looks against Milwaukee. They've generated a ton of open looks against Cleveland. And for the most part, I think their looks from three have been better than Cleveland's. And part of that is, the type of offense that the Pacers run. They are excellent at, breaking the paint. Shout out Tyrese Halliburton. And then finding open shooters. And, that's led to a lot of open looks for them. And the Pacers have done an excellent job of not allowing the Cavaliers to shoot as many threes as they want because they're a team that wants to shoot around 45 threes. And they've done an excellent job of closing out to shooters and making those guys rush their jump shots. And it's paid off so far in this series. But the Cavaliers have good shooters. Like Sam Merrill's a really good shooter. Max Strus, Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland plays tonight. DeAndre Hunter shooting 43% from three during his time with Cleveland this season. Like at some point, your shooting teams just eventually start making shots. And hopefully tonight is not the night that happens. Okay, let's go. Let's win tonight. Let's not worry about anything else. If you're there, be loud, get riled up. Eddie White is coming on the Dan Dawkins Show today at 1:30. Can't wait. Just do what Eddie White does and have an infectious energy the entire time that you're there. The game is going to be outstanding. I've got Funless Friday lined up and ready to go. I want to highlight the most important Cavalier returners. As Coach Carlisle said in that clip earlier, it seems like all three guys are going to play. I'm going to rank them in terms of their importance from least important to most important. That way you know who to watch out for. That way you know who's going to likely have the biggest impact for Cleveland tonight. I'll tell you who that is when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
In honor of Indy's great tradition, Carter's My Plumber presents the Carter 500 Hot Water Marathon. Now through May 31st, call Carter's My Plumber and get a $500 instant discount on our exclusive Allegiant series. A quality Bradford white water heater, American strong and built to be the best. Get hot water today and save $500 during the Carter 500 Marathon. From Indy's hot water experts, Carter's My Plumber.
Carter'sMyPlumber.com.
may, one day, be a must-listen for sports enthusiasts.
Yeah, and monkeys might fly out of my butt.
Uh-oh. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you've had a nice week. It's Friday. Let's go. Turn me up. Friday. Pacers tonight, Game 3. Coach Carlisle believes that the Cavaliers will have all three guys back. DeAndre Hunter, Evan Mobley, and Darius Garland. And so for today, I wanted to highlight who I think are the most important returners for the Cavaliers in this Funless Friday. Okay, number 3 is DeAndre Hunter. DeAndre Hunter is an important player for Cleveland. But between him, Mobley, and Garland, he's the least important. Right? They made the trade for him right before the trade deadline. And I believe that it was that move that made people take this team a little more seriously, right? He gave them some lineup flexibility. And that's obviously a very valuable thing to have. He's a real wing who can dribble, pass, and shoot. Meanwhile, there are other guys that on this Cavaliers roster that are wings but can't really dribble or pass. They can just shoot and defend. Dean Wade, shout out. So that lineup flexibility is important, and it's valuable for the Cavaliers to have, but they don't need him to win games. He obviously makes it a little bit easier for Cleveland to run good offense and be impactful on that side of the ball, and he helps them out defensively as well, and all that good stuff. Like in the 27 games that he played for the Cavaliers during the regular season, he shot 43% from 3. I mean, the guy is just a lights-out, knockdown shooter off the bench. He averaged 14 points per game for him off the bench. He gave them more positional size, which helps you be a better defensive team. He's a good defender, too. He's just an all-around good player. But the Cavaliers don't need him. He obviously makes them better, but they don't need him. Before they made that trade for DeAndre Hunter, they were 41-10. They were the 1 seed in the East. They are more than capable of winning games without that dude. He makes them better. Don't get me wrong. But they don't need him. Okay? They'd obviously like to have him as opposed to having him watch the game in street clothes. He's a good player, but he's not going to swing the series if Evan Mobley and Darius Garland don't play, unless, because there's a but to everything. He'll have these stretches where he just doesn't miss threes. He'll catch the ball, he'll look at his defender and be like, and he'll shoot it anyway, and he'll make it because he's DeAndre Hunter, and he goes through stretches like that. So unless he's doing that, then he's not going to swing the series in the Cleveland Cavaliers' direction. Number 2, Evan Mobley. Evan Mobley's their most important defensive player. He was the defensive player of the year. They missed him in that second game, even though you could argue they gave up less points in game 2 than they did in game 1. But hey, that's neither here nor there. But for full context, they gave up 121 points in game 1 and then 120 points in game 1 and then 121 points in game 2. So not that big of a difference, but still, it's funny. So they missed him, though, in that second game. He allows them to be more flexible defensively. Jared Allen is an excellent rim protector, just an excellent player, period. That's the kind of guy that every team in the NBA would want. A big athletic center who can block shots, doesn't make business decisions when trying to block shots, sets good screens, rolls to the rim, has a nice little float game if he needs it, and finishes above the rim, and also makes his free throws. Jared Allen, an excellent player. But Evan Mobley makes them better because of the flexibility that he gives them defensively. He can play center. He can also play power forward alongside Jared Allen. He can block shots. He's an excellent screen and roll defender. He can switch onto smaller players and defend at a high level. He's a good rebounder. And he is severely missed by the Cavaliers on that end of the floor. And he's also missed offensively. His ability to go up and grab a defensive rebound and then just go, not have to give the ball up to a guard. Like, that's something very valuable. To me, Evan Mobley is, imagine if Draymond Green was 7'1" and didn't hit people for fun. That's who Evan Mobley is when he's playing his absolute best. And, in game one, he was dominant on the offensive end. It wasn't just the defense that he provided. He was 9 of 13 from the field. He got the ball 2 feet from the basket whenever he wanted. He hit 2 threes. He was a real problem for the Pacers. Like, the Pacers didn't have much of an answer for him. And he's the kind of guy that if he comes back, he could swing the series, even if DeAndre Hunter and Darius Garland don't play for the rest of the series. Like, he is that impactful on both ends of the floor. And if he finds his way onto the floor tonight, then the Pacers should 1,000% be worried, because Evan Mobley's probably one of the 20 best basketball players in the world, and he's one of the guys in this series that is more than capable of being the best player in a game. Darius Garland has that same ability too, and he's the guy that I don't want to see. I hope Darius Garland misses every game that he plays. Simple as that. Like, cuz he's awesome. This is one of the best point guards in the NBA. You can't really press him because he handles the ball so well, and he passes the ball, and he's incredibly fast and quick. If he comes back, we're going to see a completely different Cleveland Cavaliers team. Your point guard is always important. But for the Cavaliers, Garland is even more important because he's their second best offensive player consistently. There are nights where Evan Mobley's probably better than Garland, but from a consistency basis, Darius Garland is their second best offensive player. He's the guy that takes pressure off of Donovan Mitchell. He's the guy who generates more open three-point shots than anyone else on the Cavaliers. He's the guy who runs more screen and roll plays than anyone else on the Cavaliers. He's the guy who isolates just as often as Donovan Mitchell does. He has the ball in his hands a ton, and that is on purpose because he's great with the ball in his hands, but it also relieves Donovan Mitchell of the duty of having to do everything. He's the guy, Darius Garland, that you can leave on the floor while Donovan Mitchell is on the bench resting and know that your offense won't just be good, but will continue to be elite. Seriously, like he's a player that takes so much of that offensive load off of Donovan Mitchell. Let's just be honest. Donovan Mitchell probably never gets tired if he has Darius Garland playing alongside him. Okay, he makes everything, Darius Garland. He makes everything easier on everybody. Donovan Mitchell's load becomes incredibly lighter. Okay, Ty Jerome goes back to being a bench guy that's not being asked to play 30 minutes a night. And that's part of it. Like whenever Evan Mobley's out, Dean Wade's asked to do a little bit more, but they're not asking him to do anything that he's not capable of. Jared Allen is asked to do a little bit more, and he's like, okay, I remember when I played in Brooklyn, and I had to do everything as the defensive anchor. And I think that's a little easier for them to kind of fix. If DeAndre Hunter doesn't play, then, you're going to see more minutes from guys like Max Strus. And Max Strus is cool with that. He's like, oh, I get to take more shots, sign me up. But when Darius Garland plays, it makes life easier on Donovan Mitchell. And Ty Jerome goes back to just being a guy who is more than capable of swinging things in his own or in the direction of the Cavaliers whenever he's on the floor for those little like 6 or 7 minute stretches. So this is the guy that if he comes back tonight, I'll be the most concerned about. Seriously. Because, Ty Jerome no longer has to play 30 minutes a night. Donovan Mitchell, he's asked to do less, which will help him be even more impactful than he's already been. Like, if you can lighten the load of Ty Jerome and Donovan Mitchell, then the Cavaliers are going to be in a much better position to win games going forward, especially Ty Jerome, because he's been terrible. Donovan Mitchell's been awesome, but Ty Jerome, absolutely awful. But I have to be honest, I'm not really worried about Cleveland anymore. Cleveland's very good. They're very talented. If they play all three guys, like there is moments for concern. But they're led by a head coach who's just mentally weak. That's what he is. He was asked, I believe this morning, that's when the video was tweeted out, at least by Spencer Davies, who does an excellent job covering the Cavaliers. Kenny Atkinson was asked about the 2-minute report from the previous game and whether, and like if you go through that 2-minute report, by the way, like there's nothing wrong with what the Pacers did. It talks about how they missed like a 3 seconds in the lane on Donovan Mitchell, and they list all of the lane violations committed by both teams. And so Kenny Atkinson, he was asked about it, and listen to this very long response, not just about game 2, but also about game 1, because this guy just can't seem to get game 1 out of his head.
Yes, I saw it.
What was your reaction to it?
Chris, I'm at the point where, let's look at it this way. We're up 20. And when you talk about the last 2 minutes, I kind of look at, well, how did we lose that 20-point lead? And everything happened way before then. And I think we always have, we all do. I do too, recency bias. So what happened in the last 30 seconds? It's like, how did you lose that 20-point lead? So I'd say it was coaching decisions, player decisions, and then referee decisions. And we all made mistakes. And then if you put it in like a kind of ledger, like you add all those up, and their minus 20 goes to, oh my gosh. So, they obviously made mistakes. I made mistakes. Players, we had, plenty of decisions where we could have made this. So that's just, I'm kind of there with that. And the only thing I will repeat, I just adamant about this, and what I don't like is that excessive acts, in my opinion, right? And that's not obviously the league's opinion, can lead to any type of kind of doubt for player availability. And it's funny. I think the referees kind of applied for the most part the rule. My question is, what we got to look at is okay, is there that line of excessiveness? Do we need to move that line? Because we want the defensive player of the year available. We want DeAndre Hunter available. And I'll just repeat again, not malice in those acts, not like none of that stuff, right? Like it's just like, okay, if that went over the line, there should be a sanction for that. And we just, I really hope the league goes back to competition committee, and they go in a room and they look at those plays and say, hey, is there something different we could have done here? Is there another, can we make this better? So we that there's, because once you start getting into the injury, I think that's something you really got to look at. As a league, we have to look at.
Kenny Atkinson just complaining. Game 1 happened forever ago. Your team just blew a 20-point lead in game 2, and you're still talking about a couple plays that weren't over the line. It's called playoff basketball. Talking about a couple plays that weren't over the line. The play where DeAndre Hunter gets hurt, they reviewed, they challenged it. And the referees came back and said, yeah, that's not a foul. That is marginal contact. And they were right. I get it. Live, it looked worse than what it actually was. But Benedict Mathurin just made a great play. Stop complaining about it. It's so, I want to like Kenny Atkinson. I really do. I think he's a really smart basketball coach. The way that he's taken this same team that was like a 5 seed last year, a 4 seed, excuse me, and all of a sudden they're a 1 seed that won 64 games. The dude's brilliant. But maybe quit complaining about stuff that happened 2 games ago and get ready for game 3. It just shows how mentally weak that dude is. Because that's what he is. Simple as that. If you're still worried about something that happened two games ago, like you got to flush it and move on. Like every coach at every level tells their players to move on, 48-hour rule. You got 2 days to get over, whatever happened. And then you move on. That is a normal message to receive from your coach when you lose a tough game, when calls aren't going your way. Flush it and move on, because that's what you have to do. Because if you're getting ready for game 3 and you're, in the back of your mind, you're still thinking about foul calls that didn't go your way, even though Coach Carlisle laid out a great point yesterday. I'm going to play that audio for you here in a second, and just to show you the difference in the leadership that the Pacers players are getting versus the leadership that the Cavalier players are getting. And it's no wonder that the mentally weak Cleveland Cavaliers collapsed after building up a 20-point lead, while this mentally tough and resilient Indiana Pacers team found their way to battle back. So after hearing Kenny Atkinson complain and whine about officials in game 1, after hearing that for 2.5 minutes, listen to Pacers head coach Rick Carlisle talk about the officiating so far in this series.
Well, I mean, in 2 games, we've been called for 9 more fouls than them, and they've shot 9 more free throws than us. So it doesn't add up. So look, and we're not expecting any gifts from the referees. I don't think we got any in either of the first 2 games. I know they disagreed with some calls. It's all part of it. You know? So we've just got to do our very best to maintain the kind of edge you got to have headed into a 3rd game when you've won a couple.
Rick Carlisle, love that response. What do you think of the officiating so far in this series? Kenny Atkinson continues to complain about it. Well, we've been called for 9 more fouls. They've taken 9 more free throws than we have. If we blew in Donovan Mitchell's ear like the great Lance Stevenson would have, then they probably would have called us for a foul, and he would have taken 2 more free throws based on how game 2 was officiated. But it's part of it. I love that he said that, because Rick Carlisle is a guy who's been around for a long time. He's been the head coach of a team that won an NBA championship. And he understands. Meanwhile, Kenny Atkinson, this is his first time as a head coach coaching in the playoffs, I believe. I don't think he ever got the Brooklyn Nets to the playoffs. He may have, but one way or the other, Coach Carlisle is significantly more experienced in the playoffs. And he just understands that this is the way that this goes. The playoffs are more physical. And knowing that, this Pacers team they're a little more physical. They're going to bump you and chuck you and push you out of bounds, and they're going to challenge you at the rim, and it's awesome. And the Pacers have been the more physical team. The Pacers should be called for more fouls than Cleveland based on how they've defended in this series. But I greatly appreciate Coach Carlisle being able to stand there and be like, you know what? We don't think we've gotten any breaks. Doesn't matter. It's part of it. Let's go. We got to move on. We have to maintain our edge for game 3. That is so different than, I really hope the league looks at these plays and they change what they think is, deemed unnecessary, because I thought those plays were pretty unnecessary. That's Kenny Atkinson sitting there whining. Pacers, they win tonight because Kenny Atkinson, for some reason, is still concerned about game 1. And that's great for the Pacers. I hope Kenny Atkinson is concerned about game 1 of the second round of the NBA playoffs every time he plays the Pacers from here on out. Because when you're worried about something other than, the most important game of your season, then chances are you aren't going to be as well prepared as you possibly could have been. Pacers tonight, they're 3.5-point underdogs as of right now. I think that's insane. Give me the Pacers, because mental toughness is incredibly important, and it looks like the Cleveland Cavaliers don't have it. And hopefully, your Indianapolis Colts can take a page from these Indiana Pacers, be a little bit tougher, be a little bit more resilient, and continue to do what they did this offseason, and that is address things in free agency. Lou Anarumo spoke to the media a couple days ago. Was going to get to it yesterday, but we had Pacer stuff to talk about, baby. And so that's what we did. But we're going to take a little break from Pacers game 3. I hope you're going tonight. If you see me there, come say what's up. Would love to meet you. But we're going to take a little break from Pacers, and we're going to talk a little Colts. Okay? Because I like Lou Anarumo. He was asked questions during his media availability, and he actually answered them. Pretty incredible. Lou Anarumo with some thoughts on this year's Colts defense when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes. Maybe. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Game 3 tonight between the Pacers and the Cavaliers. Can't wait. I'm so ready for the game. I'll be there. If you see me, come say what's up. Big thank you to Kevin Pritchard, who was nice enough to send me a couple tickets. I could take my dad, which I'm super pumped for. You know, like my dad, I'm lucky. I think that there are a lot of people who have a relationship with their dad where they either think that their dad's like the best dude ever or they think that he's the worst guy ever. I feel like there's most people fall into one of those two categories. And I'm lucky enough to think that my dad's just the best. And really excited tonight to get to take him. So big thanks to Kevin for hooking me up. The Colts. At this time last year, there was a major question about the secondary. And that perception of the Colts secondary has made a complete and total 180. The secondary was the weakness of this defense last year. Now it's the strength of their defense. And it's just amazing, what free agency can do. Imagine if Chris Ballard had been doing this all 9 years. Seriously, like he might have won a division by now. The Colts probably wouldn't have a 5-year streak of not making the playoffs. And the Colts' newest defensive coordinator was asked about the additions made to the defense, what he liked and didn't like about him. More specifically, he was asked about Cavaliers Ward and Cam Bynum, the two kind of headline free agency signings for the Colts this year. And here's what Lou Anarumo had to say about these new defensive additions.
Well, we've certainly added some pieces both through, free agency and then again in the draft. Chris Ballard and his crew have done, amazing job of, filling in some areas. And, we've added quality players at each level of the defense. So super excited about it.
What does adding Mooney Ward kind of give you in terms of that outside corner?
Yeah, he's been a really good player, a really good, consistent corner in our league for a long time. He can match up on the best receivers. He's got length to guard bigger guys, but he's quick enough to handle, the shorter, faster guys. So, I think he brings a boatload of and he's a good tackler, so he's a full package for sure.
Like shadowing, or is that just wrinkles?
Yeah, I think if it's warranted in particular game plans, for sure. I think he's up for that. I've always kind of done that, match guys up with who I think is a good matchup for us, and maybe, give us a little bit of an advantage. So we'll see how it goes.
Along with Ward, what's your impressions of Bynum and what he can and does bring to the secondary?
Well, again, another guy that's got a bunch of different skill sets that can help us. He started out as a corner. So he's got some coverage ability. He's always been able to take the ball away. He's been a consistent tackler. He's super smart. He's played in a few systems, so he has a good feel for a little bit of everything in terms of, just not one particular defense. He's bringing in a winning edge to our team. So, and that's important.
Lou Anarumo, Colts' newest defensive coordinator right there, talking about some of these new additions on the back end of this Colts defense. And he mentions how he feels like Chavarius Ward can follow the opposing team's best wide receiver. When was the last time the Colts had their best cornerback follow the opposing team's best wide receiver and you felt good about it? Probably Vontae Davis in the 2014, 15, and 2016 seasons. It's been a decade since the Colts have had a real lockdown cornerback. It's amazing what free agency can do for a team and trades, because obviously Vontae Davis was acquired via a trade with the Miami Dolphins where they gave up a second-round pick. With Cam Bynum, he brought up his ability to do multiple things. Now he has, some experience playing corner, and so he's got some coverage skills, and, flexibility is really nice. It is. He also mentioned how Cam Bynum takes the ball away. He does an excellent job of doing that. He's had 3 straight seasons of having 2 or more interceptions in a row. Over the last 3 years, between fumbles and interceptions, he's forced 14 turnovers. That's a pretty good number. When was the last time the Colts had a safety who had a knack for making plays on the back end of the defense, whether that was interceptions or forcing fumbles? Mike Adams in 2014 is probably the answer. That was 11 years ago. He had 5 interceptions in that 2014 season. Then he followed it up in 2015 when he had 5 more interceptions. It's been a decade since the Colts had a player on the back end of their defense who could take the ball away. Hey, do you know how the Colts acquired Mike Adams? They signed him in free agency. Very late. I believe he was the last signing of that offseason. Okay, it's amazing what you can do in free agency. And with it, the Colts have flipped their weakness into their greatest strength on defense. And I'm hoping that this Colts secondary lives up to the expectations that people have for them. You know, Lou Anarumo is supposed to be one of the better defensive coordinators in the NFL. So between the upgrades at coordinator, the upgrades at corner, the upgrades at safety, there is no reason for the Colts to not have a good secondary this season. If the secondary does struggle, it'll be because this pass rush doesn't get home. And that's sadly my biggest area of concern for the Colts. They didn't get to the passer last year. They were 25th in the NFL in sacks. Their pressure rate was only 29%. That's bottom 10 in the NFL. Okay? Like, they have to be better than that. And, you know, Lou Anarumo was asked about the defensive line, and he talked about DeForest Buckner and how there's a lot of pride in that room and how he's betting on those dudes. It's like, well, like, you kind of have to. Okay? You know, he talked about how they're hungry. That's an entry fee. Everyone in the NFL is hungry. Okay? That doesn't earn you anything, right? If they were satisfied after being a bottom 10 defensive line unit in the NFL last year, then that would be a major issue. Okay? And I hope that Lou Anarumo can find a way to help this group generate a little bit more pressure, right? Because that's obviously going to be important if the Colts want to win the division and maybe even win a playoff game. And it's going to be really important if Chris Ballard wants to keep his job, because he has spent all of these draft picks, first and second round picks, on these defensive linemen. He used a second round pick on a defensive lineman this year. And none of them have produced at a high level yet. And that has to change at some point. And hopefully Lou Anarumo is the guy who can go and get it to change. But I listened to, you know, the full press conference, and I am officially all in on Lou Anarumo. He understands this one thing that is so incredibly important. He was asked a question about, you know, Colts' new edge rusher JT Tuimoloau, however you say it. And here's what he had to say about the Colts' newest edge rusher.
Well, I mean, super excited. You know, I just think that JT brings so many different tools with him. You know, can rush, is a big guy, so can, you know, slide down inside and use him somewhat as an inside rusher potentially. Stout against the run. He's been able to take the ball away. I think he had 16 some odd sacks in his career. So you're talking about a guy that's had proven production at the highest level. Again, another guy, to me, it's important that, you know, the guys we took in free agency, they're used to winning, and that's a big part of becoming a consistent winning team. Is you got players that are used to it. This guy just won a national championship, so you know, Cam Bynum's been used to being in the playoffs. Ward's been in Super Bowls, you know, so you know, I think that stuff's all important.
Lou Anarumo right there talking about the importance of bringing in winning players. You have to have that. And I'm glad that Chris Ballard went out and got players that have won, between JT Tuimoloau and, you know, Tyler Warren won games in the college football playoff, and Cam Bynum 14-3 last year. Travarius Ward's played in 2 Super Bowls. I'm going to assume that that's a Lou Anarumo thing, because that didn't seem to be important to Chris Ballard before Lou Anarumo showed up. So I really like him. I'm glad that he wants dudes that have won before. Jim Bob Cooter, Colts offensive coordinator, spoke as well. He didn't say anything per usual. When we come back here in about 4.5 minutes, Pacers, Cavaliers, game 3 tonight. What's going to happen? I'm going to tell you when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Let's do this. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe watching on Twitter, __ Jonathan Smith. If you want to follow me there, you can also listen via the Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. Tonight, Game 3, Pacers, Cavaliers. Pacers obviously up 2-0 in the series, and I can't wait. So excited for the game tonight. I will be there. If you're also there, come by, say what's up. That'd be cool. Tonight, what's going to happen? I don't know. But there's one thing in particular that I am very confident will happen. And that is Tyrese Halliburton is going to play well tonight. He has crossed over from a player that I think is going to play well in the playoffs to a player that I now expect to play well in the playoffs, because that just wasn't the case last year. You thought he was going to play well because he was the best player on this Indiana Pacers team, but it wasn't a guarantee. This year, it feels more like a guarantee. He had bad games last year. Game 1 against the Bucks, Game 5 against the Bucks wasn't very good either. Games 1 and 5 against the Knicks were awful. Okay, I'm not worried about him disappearing this year because he has been just better. He has done an excellent job of finding this balance between being aggressive and getting his teammates involved. Okay, he has broken the paint so many times in these first 7 playoff games. And if that continues, then the Pacers are going to have a great chance to win tonight. No way around it. Okay, because when he gets in the lane, he generates a ton of open looks for everybody. And if the Cavaliers stay home, he's going to say, that's great. I will make this layup. And then the Pacers will score 2 points. It's beautiful basketball. It really is. And that has been the recipe for success for him over the last 2 years. When he touches the paint, the Pacers are at their best. No way around it. Because the Pacers have a ton of spacing. They got 5 guys on the floor at all times who can step out onto the perimeter and make a 3. That is who they are. But spacing starts at the rim. You have to have someone who can break down the defense and cause the defense to react in some way, shape, or form. Tyrese Halliburton is the guy who does that. He gets the defense moving in, as someone in the corner comes down to help, and then he kicks it out. Halliburton is the guy who provides that so very, very important rim pressure for the Indiana Pacers. Okay, he is an excellent finisher. He is. Okay, I thought he was great in Game 1, using his mid-range game, which is so good. The, play where he gets to 8 feet from the basket on the right-hand side of the lane, and he's got Jared Allen on him, and he pump fakes left, and then he spins back, and he gets underneath him, and he does this long reach, extending layup for 2, big bucket there. He is a great finisher. He's been very good in that 12 to 17-foot range in terms of using his jump shot in that area. And he's needed to do that because he's just not shooting the ball very well from 3 so far in these playoffs. 31% from 3, right, through these first 6 playoff games. And chances are, you haven't noticed it as much as you normally would because he's done an excellent job in finding other ways to score, getting downhill, getting to the rim, hitting that pull-up jumper. And that's so important because when Tyrese Halliburton settles for 3s, he just becomes a normal NBA point guard. When he's getting downhill, though, and he's touching the paint, and he's getting to the rim, and he's using that mid-range pull-up game, then he becomes the elite player we've seen all postseason long because it opens up his ability to make passes, and it also opens up his 3-point shot. When you look at the game winner that he hit in game 2 over Ty Jerome has to have respect for him and his ability to get to the rim because he'd been getting there whenever he'd wanted through the first 8 quarters of that series. And so when you go to the rim and you use that mid-range pull-up game, it opens up that step-back jumper that Tyrese Halliburton loves to use so much. And so when it comes to the game tonight, I fully expect for Tyrese Halliburton to be awesome because he's been awesome all playoffs long. It's a large part of why the Pacers are 6-1 so far in these playoffs. And the other reason why they're 6-1 in these playoffs is because it seems to be someone different in every game. And that's not a bad thing for the Pacers, right? Like going into every game, you have to ask the question of like, who else is going to show up and help Tyrese Halliburton? And for a lot of teams, that's a negative thing. Like if you watch the Lakers and you watched any of the sports talk stuff in LA or on any of the big networks, because it's the Lakers and you have to lead with the Lakers, even though they really weren't that interesting this year outside of the trade for Luka. And you would watch, and First Take would do that really annoying thing where they'd be like, so-and-so has to step up. Rui Hachimura has to step up. And with the Pacers, you ask that same question, but it's not in a negative way because the Pacers are a very deep team. It is about all 5 guys on the floor. And the Pacers have had guys throughout these playoffs show up to really help Tyrese Halliburton all playoff series long. Because as much as I love Halliburton, like he's just not going to take enough shots to score 40. If Halliburton gets 40, it's because he was like 9 of 10 from 3. Seriously. That only gets him to 27. I don't know where those other 13 points are coming from, but you get the picture. And the fact that this rotation of like not even role players, like because they're better than that, but this rotation of other good basketball players on this Pacers team of just being able to step up and help Halliburton kind of shoulder the offensive load. Like that's why they're 6-1 in these playoffs so far. And it's just like it's a Russian roulette thing. You know, you grab your Indiana Pacers wheel and you spin it, and then it lands on fill in the blank player, and then they end up being great. Sometimes throughout the playoffs, that's been Miles Turner, who's been excellent, by the way. That's why I'm wearing the old Hickory Miles Turner jersey today. It's a great look, great jersey. Anyway, it was Aaron Nesmith and Benedict Mathurin. Like they were huge in game 2, kind of helping manufacture that comeback for the Pacers. TJ McConnell, game 5 against the Bucks was spectacular. Who's going to be that guy tonight? I think it's going to be Pascal Siakam. I hope that it's Pascal Siakam because he is due for a big game. You know, I talked about this a little bit yesterday. He was really good those first 3 games against the Milwaukee Bucks. But games 4 and 5 and games 1 and 2 of this Cleveland Cavaliers and Indiana Pacers series, he's just kind of floated. Like you don't really notice him. And sometimes that's a good thing because he gets 25 really easily. And you're like, wow, like that dude scored 25 points. Jeez, he only took 13 shots. Wow. Like that is a normal Pascal Siakam experience. But in this series so far, it's like, oh, I didn't notice Pascal Siakam all game. Oh, no wonder. He only scored 8 points. He only took 7 shots or whatever it winds up being. So he's due for a big game. I feel like this is a series where he should do well, especially watching game 1. He had a lot of really good looks. He just wasn't very efficient, only shot 6 of 15 from the field. But I expect him to be really good tonight. I expect him to be totally locked in. He is the most experienced Pacer on this roster. He's won a title, won it in Toronto. He knows what it takes to win games like this, and I think he's going to have a big game because of that, and because he knows that the Pacers are going to need him to be awesome tonight in order to grab a big-time win. I'm expecting for the Pacers top to bottom to come out focused. They got off to a really slow start in game 2 just because the intensity and the sense of urgency just wasn't really there. And Tyrese Halliburton was asked about that slow start in game 2, their ability to grab 2 big wins on the road already. And here he is talking about not only winning 2 road playoff games, but also that slow start in game 2.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously that's, to go there and win 2 is a really big deal, especially, just because of who they are, what their home court looks like, what playoffs look like. To go take 2 at home, on their home floor is a big deal. But still think we just got to approach it the right way, man. Like, you want to take advantage of the opportunity that's in front of us, but at the same time, you understand that, they're going to play desperate. They're going to play to win. And honestly, we should be desperate too. We should be just as desperate to protect home court, take care of home court the right way. Because, I mean, mathematically, if we take care of home court, we win the series. So, it's really important for us to just approach it the right way. I felt like game 2 we were a little loose to start the game, and we got to nip that in the bud. Be ready to go game 3.
Tyrese Halliburton right there talking about winning 2 games on the road to start this series, and also talking about that slow start there in game 2. He hit on it right there at the end, and how they need to nip that in the bud. And he's obviously right, but I think that they will, because this is a serious Pacers team. Okay, they have closed out big time series before, Game 7 in the Garden last year. Like, they're going to be very ready to go tonight, and I think they'll look much better in the first quarter than they did in Game 2. I don't expect for the Pacers to get down 20 at any point in this game, but this game's going to be very tough for them to win, and not just because they're up 2-0, not just because it looks like Evan Mobley and Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell and DeAndre Hunter are all going to play. As Coach Carlisle highlights here in this clip, Coach Carlisle was asked how to avoid getting down 20, and he talks a little bit at the end about how different the Cavaliers are going to look tonight, because it seems like all 3 of those guys who were out in game 2 are going to play tonight.
Rebounding, big thing. We got to do better against their pressure. And obviously Mitchell's a big concern, and it sounds like all their guys are going to play in game 3. That's what we're hearing. So we got to be prepared for that. So, in a playoff series, there's always a lot going on. There's a lot we got to be ready for.
Rick Carlisle couldn't have said it better. There's a lot that these guys have to be ready for tonight, because a fully healthy Cleveland Cavaliers team is very, very problematic. And there's video, once again, posted by Spencer Davies, who's done an excellent job covering the Cavaliers so far throughout the this series. He's got a video up of all 3 of those guys, DeAndre Hunter, Evan Mobley, and Darius Garland, all getting shots at the shoot around. And obviously, shoot around is very different from the actual game. But still, like, when you're expecting all 3 of those guys to play, like, it changes the game drastically. If the Cavaliers have everyone, then this game's going to look very different compared to the first 2, because Darius Garland makes them better, and DeAndre Hunter off the bench makes them better, and Evan Mobley, Defensive Player of the Year, he makes them better. Okay, and even if all 3 of those dudes aren't at 100%, then the game's still going to be different, and the Cavaliers are still going to be better, just because of the attention that the Pacers are going to have to give to those 3 guys. Now, obviously, if Darius Garland's out there like limping, then that's going to impact how things go for Cleveland. But if they're all at 80%, then I'll be worried, because that's where everybody's at right now. Everyone's banged up, everyone's hurt, everyone's tired. You got to dig deep. And this Cleveland Cavaliers team, they went 64-18 for a reason. And all 3 of those dudes played a major, major role in that. But I do think that Coach Carlisle is right. This game will be different, but if they do the 3 things that he listed at the top of that clip where he was talking to the media yesterday, they'll win the game. If they rebound better, if they handle the pressure better, and if they find a way to slow down Donovan Mitchell, then they'll be fine, no matter who's playing for Cleveland. Believe it or not, the Pacers actually won the rebounding battle in game 2, 44 rebounds to the Cavaliers 43. But they gave up 14 offensive rebounds. That cannot continue to happen. That is not a great way to figure out ways to win. So they've got to be better on the glass. Miles Turner, love you. He had 5 blocks in game 2, by the way. In addition to that 11-point second quarter, which was huge, or just getting the Pacers on track. Like they have to rebound better. Maybe that's Halliburton. He had 5 rebounds in the fourth quarter. Maybe they asked him to crash the glass a little bit more on the defensive end of the floor, as opposed to trying to leak out. But then, that slows your pace down, and the Pacers obviously want to play as fast as possible. So we'll kind of see how they try to rebound the ball a little bit better. I do think that the easiest thing, though, for them to fix, and it would do huge things for their offense, is the turnovers. The Pacers turned the ball over 17 times in game 1, and they turned it over 18 times in game 2. That can't continue to happen. That is a very uncharacteristic thing for the Pacers to do in this series. Really, just period. Okay, they were the 3rd best team in the NBA during the regular season at not turning the ball over. This is something that I expect them to fix rather quickly because, as I said, this is a team that doesn't turn the ball over. Halliburton has the ball a lot, even though he's not turning the ball over. I believe he has 0 turnovers in these first 2 games, even though the Pacers have 35 in the first 2 games. So I expect this to be fixed. Andrew Nembhard turned the ball over 8 times there in game 2. I don't think that he's going to do that again. So the thing, though, that I don't know how they're going to fix is this Donovan Mitchell issue. He's going by Andrew Nembhard and Aaron Nesmith at will. He's getting fouled every time he gets to the rim. He's converting some of those as well for and ones. He's getting open threes pretty consistently. Like he's able to get to that step back and that pull up 3, which he really enjoys taking both. He's just not making them right now. He's due for a really big shooting night after starting 2 of 18 from 3 in these first 2 games. I know he went and got 48 points in game 2, but the dude can play better. If he starts making jump shots, then that's going to become a real area of concern for the Pacers. And this whole Cleveland team is due to start making some threes. Okay, they've shot under 30% from 3 in these first 2 games. They were second in the NBA in 3-point shooting percentage during the season at 38%. They're going to start making threes at some point. And hopefully that night isn't tonight. I think the Pacers have done a good job of contesting threes and running the Cavaliers off the 3-point line, but good shooting teams eventually start making shots. And hopefully that night is not tonight, because if the Pacers go up 3-0, people are going to feel pretty great about the Pacers and their chances to get out of this series. But it becomes significantly harder if all 3 of these guys do wind up playing. DeAndre Hunter, Darius Garland, and Evan Mobley. Currently, they're shooting shots and shoot around. That's a good sign for Cleveland fans. Doesn't really mean anything, though, because shoot around and having to cut and run around and do all those 2 things couldn't be any more different. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, I'm going to list off for you for Fun List Friday. I'm going to give you a list of the least importance of those 3 guys coming back to the most importance of those 3 guys coming back when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
it's in today's sports world, it's here. The real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you had a nice week. It is Friday. Hopefully you're able to go to the game tonight. If not, you got to watch the game tonight because the NBA playoffs have been nothing short of outstanding. The Pacers have been right in the middle of it with not one but two insane comebacks in like the last week. Incredible. No other way to really put it. And the series is only getting better. It looks like DeAndre Hunter, Darius Garland, and Evan Mobley are all three going to play tonight for the Cleveland Cavaliers. It's not good for the Pacers. I like it when teams are a little shorthanded. And I was thinking about this last night because I kind of figured that we would see everyone return. I know Coach Atkinson of the Cleveland Cavaliers came out after the game and said, or before the series, and was pretty adamant. He was talking about how, he doesn't want to play Darius Garland if he's only at 50 or 60% or whatever. And I was like, look, if they go down 0-2, that idea is going to change really quickly. And sure enough, it did. It looks like he's going to play tonight. And I wanted to rank the most important of those three guys for Cleveland. So for today's Funless Friday, who are the most important Cavalier returners from injury tonight? Number 3 is DeAndre Hunter. Love DeAndre Hunter. That dude's an important player for the Cavaliers. They made the trade for him, before the deadline, and that move is what made people take them more seriously. He gave them some lineup flexibility, and that's a very valuable thing to have. With that being said, they don't need him to win games. Now, clearly he makes them better. Okay, during his 27 games with the Cavaliers, they only lost 4 games. So they went 23-4 during the regular season with him on their roster. It's pretty good. Shooting 43% from 3 in those games. He averaged 14 points off the bench, and he gave them more positional size, which helps you be a better defensive team. And he's also just a good defender, period. Like this guy's a good player, but he's not needed. He's not. Before they made that trade for DeAndre Hunter, the Cavaliers were 41-10. They're more than capable of winning games without that guy. He makes them better, obviously, but they don't need him. They'd obviously like to have him as opposed to having him watch the game in street clothes. And, you don't give up assets for a guy if you just want him to watch the games, right? You give up assets for a guy who's hopefully going to play in them. So he's a good player, but he's not going to swing this series if Evan Mobley and Darius Garland don't play, unless he goes on, one of his little things where he'll have like a week where he just doesn't miss a 3. It's really annoying. And so unless he does that, he's not going to swing this series in one way or the other without Evan Mobley and Darius Garland starting to play. So the second guy on this list is Evan Mobley. Donovan Mitchell's their best offensive player. Evan Mobley's their best defensive player. He was the defensive player of the year this year, and they missed him in that second game. Okay, he allows them to be more flexible on the defensive end. He can block shots. He's an excellent screen and roll defender. He can switch onto smaller players and defend well. He's missed by the Cavaliers on that end of the floor. He's also missed offensively. He had his way in game 1. He scored 22 points, was 9-13 from the field. He got the ball 2 feet from the basket pretty much whenever he wanted. The Pacers were content to let him stand on the outside and shoot threes. That's probably how I'd guard the guy. But, he hit 2 of 5 threes. He was a real problem for the Pacers in that first game. They did not have an answer for him because, Pascal Siakam just doesn't have the size to really defend Mobley. Evan Turner probably doesn't have the foot speed to defend Mobley. So the Pacers are going to have to figure out a way to slow that guy down if he winds up playing tonight. And he is good enough to come back in this series, even if DeAndre Hunter and Darius Garland don't return. Like, he's impactful enough on both ends of the floor to swing the game in the Cavaliers' direction and potentially help the Cavaliers come back and win this series. Like, he is that kind of a player. He's one of the 20 best players in the world. And if he plays tonight, then that is definitely a means of concern for the Indiana Pacers. But they did win game 1 with Evan Mobley in the game and DeAndre Hunter in the game. So because of that, the most important guy for Cleveland is Darius Garland. This is the guy that the Cavaliers are really missing. And if he does come back, and if he is, a guy who earned an all-star spot this year, then we're going to see a completely different Cavaliers team. Your point guard is always important, but for the Cavaliers, Darius Garland is incredibly important because he's their second creator. He's the guy that takes all the pressure off Donovan Mitchell. He's the guy who the Cavaliers want to have the ball. Darius Garland runs more screen and roll than Donovan Mitchell does. In fact, Darius Garland runs more screen and roll as the ball handler than any other team, than any other player on Cleveland's roster. Darius Garland generates more open threes than any other player on Cleveland's roster, whether that's through passing or creating his own shot. So in addition to doing those two things, he also isolates just as often as Donovan Mitchell does. He has the ball for them all of the time because he's a very good decision maker, and it takes some of that pressure off of Donovan Mitchell. They're not asking him to do everything anymore. He's a guy, Darius Garland is. He's the kind of guy that you can put on the floor while Donovan Mitchell is on the bench resting, and you know that your offense is going to continue to be elite. He's a player that takes so much of that offensive load off of Donovan Mitchell because in games 1 and 2, Donovan Mitchell has done everything for that Cavalier offense. He's brought the ball up the floor. He's been the ball handler in like every screen and roll unless he's on the bench. Then it's Ty Jerome. Like he has to do so much to keep the Cavaliers in these games because the Pacers are scoring a ton of points. But if he has Darius Garland playing alongside him, then things change. He probably doesn't get tired in game 2. Darius Garland just makes everything easier on everyone. Donovan Mitchell's load becomes lighter. Ty Jerome goes back to being a bench guy that's not being asked to play 30 minutes a night. Those two players, their loads become significantly lighter when Darius Garland is actually available. And, Donovan Mitchell and Ty Jerome, they're both very important players for the Cavaliers. And if you can bring back Darius Garland, you can immediately lighten their load, and then they wind up being even more impactful, especially Ty Jerome, who's been terrible in this series. Still waiting on that dude to kind of get going because, that's another thing where, the Cavaliers are obviously going to be better if their best bench player starts making shots. So the series isn't over, even though when the road team wins the first 2 games of a series, they go on to win that series 87% of the time. So 13% of the time, teams in the Pacers' current position going back home for game 3 up 2-0, they lose the series 13% of the time, which is concerning. It just is. And with all that being said, as worried as I am because this Cavaliers offense is incredibly explosive, Kenny Atkinson is why I have all the faith in the world in the Indiana Pacers to win this series. Yes, the coach of the year is why I have faith in the Pacers to win the series. He was asked whether or not he saw the 2-minute report from game 2, where it lists that the referees missed a defensive 3-second call on Donovan Mitchell. It lists that the referees missed multiple lane violations committed by both teams. And here's what Cleveland Cavaliers head coach Kenny Atkinson had to say about that 2-minute reports and about some other calls throughout the series.
Yes, I saw it.
What was your reaction to it?
Chris, I'm at the point where, let's look at it this way. We're up 20. And when you talk about the last 2 minutes, I kind of look at, well, how did we lose that 20-point lead? And everything happened way before then. And I think we always have, we all do. I do too, recency bias. What happened in the last 30 seconds? It's like, how did you lose that 20-point lead? So I'd say it was coaching decisions, player decisions, and then referee decisions. And we all made mistakes. And then if you put it in like a kind of ledger, like you add all those up, and their minus 20 goes to, oh my gosh. So, they obviously made mistakes. I made mistakes. Players, we had, plenty of decisions where we could have made this. So that's just, I'm kind of there with that. The only thing I will repeat, I just adamant about this, and what I don't like is that excessive acts, in my opinion, right? And that's not the obviously the league's opinion, can lead to any type of kind of doubt for player availability. And it's funny. I think the referees kind of applied for the most part the rule. My question is, what we got to look at is okay, is there that line of excessiveness? Do we need to move that line? Because we want the defensive player of the year available. We want DeAndre Hunter available. And I'll just repeat again, not malice in those acts, not like none of that stuff, right? Like, it's just like, okay, if that went over the line, there should be a sanction for that. And we just, I really hope the league goes back to competition committee, and they go in a room and they look at those plays and say, hey, is there something different we could have done here? Is there another, can we make this better? So we there's, because once you start getting into the injury, I think that's something you really got to look at. As a league, we have to look at.
Kenny Atkinson, Cleveland Cavaliers head coach, right there. Just, he just keeps complaining. It's incredible the amount of whining and complaining that guy has done throughout this entire series. You just lost game 2 because you blew a 20-point lead. And he was asked about it, he's like, I asked myself, what happened? Why did we surrender this 20-point lead? It was because I made mistakes and players made mistakes, but the officials also made mistakes. Look, if you blow a 20-point lead, I promise you, it's not the officials' fault. It's probably yours and your players' fault. It's usually how that goes. Do referees have impacts on games? Yes. Do they often have a large enough impact for teams to blow 20-point leads? Absolutely not. It's ridiculous. It is whiny. And I don't like whiners. And then, after complaining about the officials in game 2, he goes back to game 1 and he brings it up again. We didn't think it was dirty, but we thought it was over the line. That foul on Evan Mobley and that, foul that wasn't a foul on DeAndre Hunter. And we really think that the league needs to redefine what excessive means. Just stop whining, man. This is the playoffs. It's tough. It's physical. Get over it. This dude is mentally weak, still worried about stuff that happened in game 1, and I get it. You lost a couple players. You did. And that sucks, okay? It's not an excuse. It's a legitimate reason to lose games in any sport when you don't have good, important players on your roster. But you had a 20-point lead in game 2 without them. And because you as a coach made mistakes and your players made mistakes, you lost. It was not the officials. Quit blaming things on the officials. Like, this dude is so mentally weak. And you hear him just whine and complain. And then you hear Coach Carlisle, who was asked about Coach Atkinson and his whining and complaining about the officials. Listen to what Coach Carlisle had to say.
Well, I mean, in 2 games, we've been called for 9 more fouls than them, and they've shot 9 more free throws than us. So it doesn't add up. So look, and we're not expecting any gifts from the referees. I don't think we got any in either of the first 2 games. I know they disagreed with some calls. It's all part of it. So we've just got to do our very best to maintain the kind of edge you got to have headed into a 3rd game when you've won a couple.
I love that the Indiana Pacers are coached by an adult who doesn't whine and complain about everything. Isn't it great? Really, just makes me happy. All he did was state facts. How do you think the officiating has been, Coach Carlisle? We've just been called for 9 more fouls than them, and we've taken 9 less free throws than they have. Then he said the officials missed calls. Part of it. It's just like it is. Like you can't expect for the referee to just be perfect. You can't expect for the referee to just consistently rule in your favor. Like that's just not how basketball works, right? In the regular season, yet alone in the playoffs, when games are exponentially more physical and refs let you get away with a lot more, unless you're Donovan Mitchell. If you blow in Donovan Mitchell's ear, it's a foul. It just is. Okay, so while Coach Carlisle is being an adult and laying out, what adults say about NBA playoff basketball, hey, it's physical. We don't expect for the refs to just like hand us anything. While he's doing that, Coach Atkinson is like, well, that foul in game 1 on DeAndre Hunter, the one that they reviewed and still said it wasn't a foul, by the way. Yeah, well, we just thought that was a little over the line and excessive. And then the play where Miles Turner fouled Evan Mobley and he hurt his ankle that he played 36 minutes on, by the way, in game 1. We just thought that was a little excessive. And we really think that the league should look at it. And the fact that there were no sanctions given out for those plays is quite ridiculous. Well, Kenny, I think you're ridiculous. Okay? Man up, quit complaining, and just go play basketball. Like you can tell that there is a significant difference in coaching experience between these two guys. Coach Atkinson, I believe this is his first time as the head coach of a playoff team. Maybe he got there with, the feel good power of friendship Nets that he was the head coach of before they went out and they, traded for Kevin Durant and that whole thing blew up. Maybe he got there once, but he definitely doesn't have anywhere near the amount of experience coaching playoff games as Coach Carlisle does. And you can just hear it in the way that those two guys have talked about officiating throughout this series. Coach Carlisle completely knows and understands that these referees aren't going to give him anything. Meanwhile, Coach Atkinson's like, well, we just, the way he got fouled and they didn't get in trouble for it. Yeah, because it's the playoffs, man. Let's go. Man up. Actually, no. Kenny, you keep being concerned about those game 1 non-foul calls. You please do that. Okay? Because Coach Carlisle, Tyrese Halliburton, and the rest of that Pacers team and organization, quite frankly, they are fully focused on game 3. Seriously, like that's really all that they want to talk about. If you ask them a question about game 2, they'll answer it. You know what they're not thinking about whatsoever? Game 1. Meanwhile, Coach Atkinson's mind is still on game 1. It's still on those foul calls or lack of a foul call, I guess, on DeAndre Hunter. It's still on the league office and them not doing something to the Pacers because of those fouls. And that is a great thing for the Pacers because the Cavaliers are about to play in their biggest game of the season. And if their head coach is still concerned with foul calls from game 1 that did or didn't happen, then like he's clearly not fully focused on game 3. And that's a great thing for the Indiana Pacers. Pacers win tonight because I just have a hard time believing that a team led by such a soft dude is going to find a way to rally back from down 2-0. Now, that being said, Donovan Mitchell's not soft. Garland's not. Mobley's not. Like those are some real competitors. And I do expect for the game to be tough tonight. But the tougher the game is, the more I like these Indiana Pacers, man. Because they are tough. They are resilient. They don't let foul calls and non-foul calls bother them. And I think that is a direct reflection of Coach Carlisle and his ability to keep these guys playing. Okay, so I like the Pacers tonight. I think they come out incredibly focused, and I think they take a 3-0 series lead, and we just get a little bit closer to the Indiana Pacers playing in the Eastern Conference Finals again, and potentially the NBA Finals. Like, that is 1,000% in play for the Pacers, but they have to take care of business tonight, and hopefully they can take care of business on Sunday as well. We can just sweep the Cleveland Cavaliers, and we can have a blast. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, the good old Indianapolis Colts that are in the middle of, it's not training camp quite yet, but like they're doing stuff. It's a lot of like individual drills and those are important, and coaches during this time, like they finally have a little bit of media availability. So we got to hear a little bit more from new defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo, and he just said some things that I really like. And I'm going to tell you what those are. And I'm going to play the audio for you when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
It may, one day, be a must-listen for sports enthusiasts.
Yeah, and monkeys might fly out of my butt.
Uh-oh. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Game 3 tonight between your Indiana Pacers and the Cleveland Cavaliers. Pacers currently up 2-0. I have a real opportunity here to kind of put it out there like, hey, This isn't just fun and games. We're coming for you, coming for that whole thing, man. And it looks like the Cleveland Cavaliers are going to have all three players available tonight in terms of Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, and DeAndre Hunter. Three guys who didn't get an opportunity to play in that Game 2 comeback. And, that obviously changes things, but I don't know. I feel like if the Pacers show up and they just continue to be who they are, then it's not really going to matter who the Cleveland Cavaliers run out there onto the floor. So we'll see how it goes. Game 3 tonight, 7:30, live on TNT, so you can watch it. And this Pacers team, they're rolling. They're a lot of fun. I think it's great when the city is able to get behind any of the sports teams, and hopefully the city of Indianapolis will be able to get behind this Colts team this year. And it's amazing what free agency can do. Chris Ballard, just imagine, if he'd been doing this all 9 years, maybe he would have won a division by now. But Lou Anarumo, Colts defensive coordinator, was asked about how this defense has changed personnel-wise from the time that he showed up here to now, because free agency obviously happened after he was hired. So that was the initial question. Then he talks a little bit about Javarius Ward and Cam Bynum in this clip.
Well, we've certainly added some pieces both through, free agency and then again in the draft. Chris Ballard and his crew have done, amazing job of, filling in some areas. And, we've added quality players at each level of the defense. So super excited about it.
What does adding Mooney Ward kind of give you in terms of that outside corner?
Yeah, he's been a really good player, a really good, consistent corner in our league for a long time. He can match up on the best receivers. He's got length to guard bigger guys, but he's quick enough to handle, the shorter, faster guys. So, I think he brings a boatload of, and he's a good tackler. So he's a full package for sure.
Like shadowing, or is that just wrinkles?
Yeah, I think if it's warranted in particular game plans, for sure, I think he's up for that. I've always kind of done that. Match guys up with who I think is a good matchup for us, and maybe give us a little bit of an advantage. So we'll see how it goes.
Along with Ward, what's your impressions of Bynum and what he can and does bring to the secondary?
Well, again, another guy that's got a bunch of different skill sets that can help us. He started out as a corner, so he's got some coverage ability. He's always been able to take the ball away. He's been a consistent tackler. He's super smart. He's played in a few systems, so he has a good feel for a little bit of everything in terms of, just not one particular defense. He's bringing in a winning edge to our team. So, and that's important.
Lou Anarumo right there talking about just these guys that they brought in. And I love hearing just the extra talent that the Colts have. Like, when was the last time the Colts had a cornerback that could follow the opposing team's best wide receiver and you felt good about it? Vontae Davis in 2014, 2015, 2016. That's a whole decade ago since the Colts had a real lockdown corner. Once again, it's amazing what free agency can do for a team and trades, because that's how the Colts got Vontae Davis. With Cam Bynum, he brought up his ability to do multiple things, and that's always nice. He also mentioned his ability to take the ball away. He's had multiple interceptions, 3 years in a row now. When you go back over the last 3 years, he has forced 14 turnovers. It's an impressive number. When was the last time the Colts had a safety who had a real knack for making plays on the back end of the defense? Probably Mike Adams, 2014. It's probably the answer. That was 11 years ago. He had 5 interceptions in 2014. Then in the 2015 season, he had 5 interceptions again. It's been a decade since the Colts had a safety on the back end of their defense who could consistently make plays and take the ball away. Okay, do you know how the Colts acquired Mike Adams way back in 2014? Do you know how? They signed him in free agency. It's amazing what you can do in free agency. It's quite fascinating. And by using free agency, the Colts have taken their weakness and they have flipped it into their greatest strength. Like, when you look at the Colts defense this year, I feel pretty good about the secondary. And I'm hoping that the Colts live up to that expectation on the back end of their defense. Okay? So, upgraded players. No more Gus Bradley. Lou Anarumo is supposedly one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL. And so hopefully between the upgrade at defensive coordinator, and it is an upgrade because I just can't imagine a world where anyone's worse than Gus Bradley at managing and calling a defense, because he was literally just like, hey, we're going to run this every time. You know that saying where they'll be like, so-and-so dialed it up? Never has once been said about Gus Bradley. It's never been said. Okay? And so between the upgrade at defensive coordinator and the upgrade at corner and safety, there's no reason for the Colts to not have a good secondary this season. Simple as that. And if the secondary does struggle, it'll be Chris Ballard's fault. Say, well, Jonathan, what do you mean? He went out and he got those guys. No. If the secondary struggles this year, it's going to be because this pass rush doesn't get to the passer. They were 25th in the NFL in sacks last year. Their pressure rate was only 29%. That's awful. It's not good. It's not. That is something that, like, when you list all the areas where Chris Ballard has struggled, he has spent so many important draft picks, first round and second round picks on these, defensive linemen, and the Colts don't have a stud. Hopefully, Leatu Latu develops into that stud because they need one. They don't have one. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, DeForest Buckner probably going to get like 12 sacks this year. Probably not. He's probably going to get like 8, and like that's a good number. But they need one of these guys that Chris Ballard spent a high quality draft pick on to come in and like be a dude. Maybe it'll be JT Tuimoloau, the new edge rusher that they drafted in the second round this year. Maybe Leatu Latu makes that leap that everyone really wants him to make. We'll see. I don't know who it's going to be. I got to be honest. I'm excited for the Colts season, but no, I'm not. I am not excited at all because I think the Colts are going to be terrible. I think they're going to be terrible. But hey, we'll see. You know who's not terrible, though? The Indiana Pacers. 7:30 tonight. If you're at the game and you see me, come say what's up. Would love to meet you. I think that'd be sick. Very excited. Can't wait. Going to be a blast. Pacers over the Cavaliers tonight. They take a 3-0 series lead. I think the crowd's going to be awesome. If you have a way to get to the game, you should go. It's going to be an incredible experience. And I can't wait to see how fired up and juiced up that crowd is going to be heading into the game tonight. And, Gamebridge, it's one of the best venues in the NBA. It is. And I can't wait to see how jacked up people are for the game tonight. So, yeah, Dan Dockett Show comes your way starting at noon. We got like 4 guests today, and they're all going to be great. You're going to want to hear all of them. We got a guest at 12:30, 1, 1:30, and 2. So we're just running them all off in a row. It's going to be a blast. You're going to want to tune in and listen to the whole thing. The Dan Dockett Show comes your way here in about 5 minutes. I'll talk to you Monday. I hope you have a great weekend. Go Pacers. Once again, they win tonight. Take them +3.5.